Yes, hi everyone. We're just going to give people just a couple of minutes to sign on. Thank you all for joining us. Just kind of get comfortable. We're in for a treat. So just kind of lay back and we'll get started soon.
I think we can get started, Michael. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. So, hi everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Michael. I'm a counselor here at Chabot College, and I'm also the coordinator of Movement, our Asian and Pacific Islander learning community at Chabot College. We are wrapping up our first year. We're off to a great start, and I just want to thank the whole campus for really supporting us in this work. And I look forward to kind of continuing to build with you all. So, I want to welcome you all to the college, Chabot College Speaker Series for May. So May actually marks is recognized as Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. And I just feel really blessed to kind of have this opportunity to kind of celebrate and, share with you all a little bit. Okay. So, but before we dive into that, before we dive into our speaker and our plans for today too much, I'm going to hand it off to one of our movement scholars, Jaslyn, and she's going to bless us with our land acknowledgement.
Chabot College respectfully acknowledges the original peoples of the lands on which this campus is built. For thousands of years and hundreds of generations, the Chochenyo people actively stewarded these lands to ensure they provided for all living things. This land on which Chabot was established was and continues to be of significance to the Muwekma Ohlone tribe. Today, we acknowledge the impact colonization had on the Chochenyo Muwekma Nation and recognize our responsibility to help them heal from this history and secure a sustainable future.
All right, thank you, Jaslyn. We are going to hand it off to Dr. Jamal Cooks to help us with our college welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. It's great to see everyone here participating in this in the President's Speaker Series. And so I find it an honor and a pleasure to introduce Dr. G.T. Reyes. There's a bio that we can all read on the internet, and he's done a lot of great stuff. He's done a lot of great stuff. I could tell you about the work that he's done, that his work is grounded with empowering young folks and teachers and school leaders. I can tell you about the idea about liberatory education, and he not only talks about this, but he does it, he lives it. And I can also tell you about that from his perspective. He believes that that he's known for standing up, for standing with, and standing for not just one group of people, but all kinds of people. And how does he do this? He does this by having theory into practice and practice into theory. What I mean by that is that in terms of his theory, he was trained by some very great people, Jabari Meharry, Naila Nasir. Look, so you didn't know I was going to go back that far, right? But the foundation of his research is about action research and about transforming and improving the communities in which he's doing the research in and working with. And when we talk about practice, he doesn't just write the articles, he doesn't just write the papers and the books, he also puts it into practice. And so in his newest piece that I believe is hot off the press, if I'm not mistaken, I'm seeing if he's nodding his head, a love letter to educational leaders of color, crewing up with critical whiteness studies. And when he talks about this, what I found that was so amazing about his idea and what he was writing about was, he says, I am writing you a love letter. However, I do not speak of the kind of love that is dominantly seen through the lens of whiteness and an irrational emotion reserved between individuals, while it is void of any usefulness to both understand and mobilize society towards a more just and equitable world. No, that reduced form of love is not the love what I'm writing about. I am writing about a love. In this love letter, I depart from dominant ways of producing scholarly work that perpetuate the ways of knowing so described by critical big homies, race homies, that instead I abide by their call for counter storytelling. I simultaneously reject and disrupt being limited to only reproducing what is dominantly accepted as an essay. And so I write this love letter to us, to himself and to us. Yeah. So with that, the next voice that you hear that is going to bless the silence is a man that we know as a father, as a community engaged scholar, a teacher, an artist, a Cal State East Bay associate professor, and what I love the most, an East Oakland hometown homie, Dr. G.T. Reyes. Let's give a round of applause, please. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Cooks. That's love. It's like I'm coming home. Thank you, Jaslyn and Michael, for that introduction. Oh my gosh. I know there's a lot of family here. There's a lot of love in the space. I want to ground us in something we all have in common. First, I want to talk about this concept. The Filipinos have this concept called kapwa. This is the principle of relationality that refers to the shared identity of living beings. And so what that means is as humans, we exist in relation to and with others. And I don't mean others like in the westernized sense of others as like opposition of self. No, I'm talking about kapwa. The idea of kapwa recognizes the self as inclusive of others. It's not like seeing me and you or you and me as if something is obtained. It's more like I am with you, you are with me, and we are always. This is the starting point of kapwa. So let us all be grounded in kapwa, particularly as a decolonial approach to ground ourselves in shared identity. And let me do a little bit of that to be a good relation with you, because you all don't know, most of you don't know who I am. I'm Dr. G.T. Reyes, professor at CSU East Bay and community member, living uninvited in unceded Huichin, otherwise known as Oakland. My mother is Erlinda Tiglao Reyes of the Taga-Ilogs in Kapampangans of Luzon, Philippines. My father is Fernando Palogo Reyes, also of the Taga-Ilogs from Luzon. I invite you now in the chat to share your name, your pronoun, your pronouns, where you're zooming in from, and why do you gather with us today? What are your hopes? So what's your name? What are your pronouns? Where do you zoom in from? And why do you gather with us today? And as you're doing that into the chat, calling your spirit into the space, your lineage, the land on which you sit, I do have to be transparent with you all. I wasn't always G. Reyes or GT Reyes. I was born Gerald Tiglao Reyes. But from the moment that I was given that name, I was stamped by the violence of colonialism and US imperialism. Reyes, my last name, was part of the tainted legacy of 500 years of Spanish colonization in the Philippines. Gerald, my first name, was given to me from a US president, Gerald Ford. A name that maybe my father and mother thought that could help me fit in, get accepted as a brown immigrant boy here in the United States. This is all not to say that I'm not grateful for my life here in the United States. I'm absolutely grateful for the abundance provided by this indigenous land that I'm on, unceded Huichin. I'm grateful for all the ways that the community here works to steward Huichin and our collective self-determination in a good way. I'm grateful for this Cinco de Mayo to celebrate the victory over the French Empire at the Battle of Puebla in 1862. I'm grateful for my life and being alive in such a way where I get to engage with folks like you, who are all genuinely trying to cultivate joy with communities and transform the oppressive conditions that have become heritage and tradition in our country. I'm grateful for you who grind steadily each day, grappling with your positionality and all these systems of oppression that try to bound and limit you each day. You who are here in spite of all the ways that society has tried to contain you. And of course, I'm grateful to celebrate Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. This is a time to celebrate, affirm, and even assert, demand our collective humanity. And so if you feel compelled in the chat, what are you grateful for today? Write it in there if you're ready. And as you do that, I'm going to go ahead and share screen. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Rachel, Michael, Beatrice. I'm going to go ahead and share this screen real quick here. This is really important. We lost another giant, y'all. We grieve the loss of an extraordinary American, U.S. Cabinet Secretary Norman Y. Mineta, a committed public servant, trailblazer, AAPI advocate. He's got a whole long list of accomplishments, but particularly he's been involved with a lot of firsts. He was the first Asian American mayor of a major American city, San Jose. He was the first Japanese American from the continental US or Turtle Island to be elected to Congress. He was the first Asian American to serve in a presidential cabinet. And when he was in Congress, he was among the first to proclaim the first week of May as Asian Pacific American Heritage Week. We all know eventually became Heritage Month. He was a defender of civil liberties, civil rights, and he even spent a large part of his childhood in the US internment camp for Japanese Americans during World War II. All this is to say is that we stand on the shoulders of giants. And with his recent transition to ancestor, let's go ahead and give a moment of silence for Secretary Norman Mineta. Thank you. Dr. Cooks, I appreciate many things about what you had said in the introduction. I am actually going to talk about love today. And so specifically, I'm going to talk about Love Yours, the decolonial critical race love letter for AAPI Solidarity. Ooh, that's a mouthful. But let's get in, let's talk about this idea of love. Love is not always clean in the ways in which we love, especially when we love hard for not just ourselves, but our fellow humans. So as I take us on this journey and talk story today, there might be some things that would activate you, that would engage some feelings that are rooted in trauma, that might awaken some of your wounds. And if you feel that your heart is racing, you feel like you're tense, you feel like you might be sweating a little bit, then maintain your breath, find it. Regulate it. Attend to your body tension. Listen your hands, massage it out. Open and close them. Your shoulders, lift them up, drop them. You might need an opportunity to critically reflect, and maybe you might need to do that now, or you might want to do that later. And your reflection might be rooted in the discomfort that you have or the pain that you're reawakened to. And certainly journal when you need, talk to a homie when you need, record yourself in a voice memo when you need. It's important to not contain these thoughts, these feelings. Because if we do, then they become us. And so I want you to remember, as you engage and experience stories today, I want you to remember that you are not your trauma, you are not your pain, you are not there. You might still have those wounds, but they do not define you. So let's get into it. I really feel compelled to write a letter. A lot of different ways. A letter is not new. I come from a long tradition. We all come from a long tradition of letter writing as a way to bring communities together, to provoke critical thought, to remind each other that we're not alone. The piece that Dr. Cooks was reading from a little bit earlier is the one here on the bottom far right. If you want a copy, feel free to hit me up or hit up any of the folks who are organizing this event. It's a labor of love. It's a love letter, but specifically, it's a decolonial critical race love letter. It involves counter stories. Counter stories are those stories that are counter to the dominant narrative or the way that things are supposed to be here in the United States, this myth that lots of people keep talking about. But when I talk about decolonial critical race counter stories, I'm talking about these are things that cultivate relationality, they build connection, they build solidarity. It brings them to a shared struggle. And it's also intimate. It speaks to you. It's intended to touch and call and speak the soul. It also centers the experiences of Black, Indigenous people of color. It doesn't bring them in on the side or maybe mention it peripherally. It is centering it. It also provides a critical analysis, which then invites critical self-reflection. Through this analysis, it's going to have you think about your own experiences. How have you experienced something similar? How's my story tied up with your story? A critical race decolonial counter story as a letter also challenges dominant ways of representing scholarly work. It doesn't just have to be this essay or this what looks like a research article. My work is absolutely research grounded, but it doesn't always look that way. Because in a lot of ways, it's rooted and it's grounded in an analysis of racism and colonialism. And so I write this letter for you that's trying to do all these things here. But why a love letter? Well, first, as Dr. Cooks had said, here's what I'm not talking about. I'm not talking about love as this heteropatriarchy defined irrational emotion that's intended that we love for the sake of this romance between man and woman. That's not the kind of love that I'm talking about. I'm talking about this critical race decolonial love. One where love is verb, as action, as intention, as prayer. I'm talking about the kind of love that is unapologetic in asserting our full humanity. The converse to this is that what are the ways in which we're not love that deny us full humanity? So when we return to love, we're also returning to our humanity. And in doing so, it's grounded in this analysis of colonialism and racism, and it attends to our need to feel loved, attends to our need to heal from these systems of oppression that inflict harm, that sustain woundedness from childhood to adulthood. But it also goes towards something. It's not just anti, it's also pro it. So it feeds the work to reroute, to restore, to rethink, to reimagine our conditions. Because the way things are, it is what it is, cannot be what it is. And so this is the kind of love that I'm talking about. And it moves towards emancipation. Ultimately, that's the goal. And so when we think about this kind of love, I want to talk about the homie J. Cole here. So he has this piece called Love Yours. And in this joint, he talks about this beauty in this struggle, ugliness in the success. Hear my words or listen to my story of my signal of distress. I grew up in this city and know sometimes we had less compared to some of my folks down the block. Man, we were blessed. He continues to say, like, there's no such thing as a love that's better than yours. Love yours. So a lot of times is kind of related to like the grass is not always greener on the other side. And oftentimes we think about like what we don't have and so forth. He reframes that. He reframes that by saying to us that let's lead with gratitude. Let's be grateful for what we do have instead of what we don't have, what we do get to do instead of what we don't get to do. And then let's recognize struggle. Let's recognize struggle and affirm that struggle. What's good, brother? What's good, y'all? Sorry, I'm in the community center. Let's affirm struggle as work. Like we got to work together. We got to work to grow. J. Cole also reminds us to listen mindfully, to be attentive, to understand how we're reacting to what we hear. And then to move with kapwa, move with love, this shared identity. And so if we take J. Cole's message to heart here, I want to draw your attention to this photo here. This is my child, Mayedi Kalaya. Mayedi is named after the Filipino moon goddess and protector of women. Here we are on the mountain of Mauna Kea on the big island of Hawaii. What do you notice here? If you notice something unusual, throw it into the chat. What do you notice? What's going on? The flag is upside down. Yes, Yvonne. What does that mean when the flag is upside down? It's distress. When the flag is upside down, typically it's during times of war, but it also means when the people are under distress. Mauna Kea has been a site for a number of years by a corporation to build a 13-meter telescope out there in the sacred mountain where there's sacred land, sacred water, place of sacred rituals. And the Kanaka Maoli peoples have been fighting as kiai, as protectors of this land to keep it serene, to preserve it. So we were there to pay homage to the kiai and all the other folks who were there. But I put this up to remind us that we have to really think critically about when we think of love, in what ways has our country shown us that it does not love us? And in fact, in what ways has our country taught us to hate ourselves? How has that been systemic? When we talk about this idea of self-hate, we tend to think about like just ourselves. But how have we been immersed in conditions that have taught us to hate ourselves? Let's hold on to this question as we explore a couple of things here as a basic idea. Like there are institutions in our world, we all know this, right? You're in an institution right now, but there's also the institution of family, there's the institution, of schools, there's the institution of church, and numerous institutions, right? Institutions are mediated by a structure, some type of design that guides what you do, how you do it. There's also culture. Culture relates to the ways in which we as people interact with each other. We produce language, we respond to things, we make stuff. That's culture. So when we think about structure and culture, what I want us to think about is inequity can absolutely be designed into a society. If we look at this house here, this floor plan of this house, we think about the framing of the house, the structure. The framing allocates resources and space to the rooms in the house. Culture is what we do within those rooms, right? So then it becomes designed. But not just inequity can be designed, unwellness can be designed, dis-ease can be designed, violence can be designed, becomes part of a system at work. So that so long as you're in this house, moving about through these rooms that is contained by this framing, you're caught up in this design. And so when we think about that, this idea of inequity, dis-ease, unwellness, violence, if it's designed, then it becomes a logical outcome. Like we're supposed to have inequity in a house that's designed to create inequity. It's supposed to happen. And when it's a logical outcome, it becomes normal. We're like, it is what it is. That's how it's always been. It's whatever. It's normal. And so a lot of you work in the university setting, educators, working with young folks, even elders, middle-aged folks, all sorts of folks. And how many times do we hear other faculty talking about students and saying, why can't they? Why don't they? Why won't they? What's wrong with them? They're just not college ready. They're not school ready. They're the problem. They're the problem. It's not me. I have nothing to do with it. Right? This becomes normal too. This idea of pathologizing people becomes normal. And so when we think about the ways in which we're taught to hate ourselves and not love ourselves, how is that normalized in our society? As part of our culture, as part of our tradition, as part of our heritage, especially when we're told in numerous ways that we're incompetent, with of course the work that matters. Like for me, oh, you do the culture stuff. Oh, you do the community building stuff. Right? Leave all the rigorous stuff to us folks over here. Or that we're menacing, we're a dangerous problem and a threat, that we're broken, we're not fully and functionally human, that we're lacking, we're never beautiful enough, we're never smart enough, we don't never have enough, we're just not enough. When we're told all these things constantly, what are we supposed to believe? Like I might be here with you right now, privileged to be in this spot to be able to share some thoughts with you all and engage with you all in community. I might do this in other places as well, in educational settings in particular, the context of education. But outside of that, and even within that numerous times, folks still see me as that teenage kid from the neighborhood. And they feel emboldened to say things like, oh, you're the principal? Ooh, I didn't think you'd be the professor. Ooh, I wouldn't have thought that you had a PhD. I mean, these are real things that folks have said to me. Like this one in particular happened to me in a yoga class. When I used to work at Stanford, a senior scholar said, oh, I want to see your dissertation. Oh, but is it going to social justice me to death? Oh, I love this one. I'm sure many of you get this. Comment on this one in the chat if this has happened to you. Oh, you're so articulate. Oh, you're so articulate. Oh, speak so well, as if you're not supposed to. All of this is to one, say that you're unorthodox. And people have literally said you're unorthodox to me in professional settings. But they're just basically saying, I'm surprised that you've done what you've done. Like, how have you maintained you and still do that? What a critic. And this is tiring, yo. These kinds of microaggressions that are like everyday subtle forms of racism to keep us in our place, to remind us of what we're supposed to be, keep us in check. They're tiring. You hear things like, where are you from? No, where are you really from? Ooh, like when they're responding to like maybe more intense response from you. Oh, I want to understand like why you responded that way. Or maybe that was just your personality, without understanding the root of some of that discontent in the first place. I don't know how many times I've got, oh, that's not professional. That's not academic. That's not rigorous. Out the cuts. Stop because of a taillight. Police officer said, are you on parole? I had my infant daughter in the back seat, my partner in the front. Are you on parole? I had an officer with knee on my back when I was a teenager say, oh, you aren't very smart, are you? It's exhausting. And then we think, oh, did that just happen? Am I being too sensitive? Am I tripping? Maybe I shouldn't have said anything. Oh, it must be my fault. And then you look within and you spin your head. Oh, I should have said this. Oh, man, I shouldn't have said that. And this kind of racial battle fatigue, oh, it's so tiring. This physiological, it affects our body. Psychological affects our mental health. Psychosocial, the way we interact with people. Emotional affects how we feel. Behavioral affects what we even do, how we react. Right? This is what happens over time as we continue to cope with something like racism and racial microaggressions. I gotta go to Kendrick. You know, he helps ground us. He's perfectly clear. I done been through a whole lot. This is for sure. But that doesn't define me. What do you want from me and my scars? I am not my scars. What do you want from me? Do you want me to just be my scar? Nah. If I'm writing you a love letter, you are not your scar. I am not my scar. We may have them. They might have informed our process of becoming, but it's not us. But yet, we see the performance of all of this, especially over the past 2 some odd years. And folks want to tell us that we matter. How are we going to believe that? But numerous examples say that we don't, particularly certain people. Whew. Just within the past year. Vicha, Atanapagdi, killed. San Francisco. Michelle Alyssa Go, killed. New York City. Unprovoked attacks. How do we make sense of this? How do we believe anybody when they tell us we matter? When unprovoked attacks result in death? How do we believe we matter when someone can walk in to some spas and shoot it up and kill kill the people who are working there. But it's not just the murder, it's what follows the murder. When asked about this person who did the murder, a Cherokee County Sheriff's Office captain said this: Long does claim that it was not racially motivated. He was pretty much fed up and kind of at the end of his rope. Tuesday was a really bad day for him. And this is what he did. He shot it up and killed people because he was fed up. Do you see the kind of justification that happens with this kind of violence, this excuse? We have Angelo Quinto in 2020, officer with a foot on the neck for over 5 minutes. His mother right there watching. This is in Antioch. His mother heard him say, "Please don't kill me." 5 minutes? And then this cat right here, Rittenhouse, was recently acquitted of shooting and killing 2 people and wounding one more person during protests over the police killing of Jacob Blake in a community that was not his own. And his lawyer has said this. He said, look, this boy was not only attacked on the streets of Kenosha, he'd been attacked in the media, social media, all over the damn world. It's wrong. He's a 17-year-old boy. He was not there to create trouble. He's the cat right here in the middle with the assault rifle. He wasn't there to create trouble, but he found himself with his life threatened, and he had the right to protect himself with self-defense. Now he finds himself accused of murder. Acquitted. Acquitted. Police do know how to de-escalate. They didn't do none to this boy. There's plenty of other examples where they didn't murder people. In particular, let's remember January 6th. Not a single shot fired here, at least by police. No one dead here. They know how to de-escalate. Arrested, murdered, arrested, murdered, arrested, murdered. They know how to de-escalate. They know how to do this. It's not a mystery to them. There's something else at work. And they certainly know how to allow certain things to continue to happen, such as these White Lives Matter rallies. I've seen signs in my own university that says there's nothing wrong with being white. Right? These types of rallies here to assert that whiteness is just another oppressed minority has been happening a lot in the past number of years. And we see this Huntington Beach police spokesperson who is responding to the White Lives Matter rally that was happening in Huntington Beach, California. He said, "We hope events such as this will serve as an opportunity for unity rather than a platform to spread hate, bigotry, and division." Oh, now you want it to be unity. All right. But what does all this have to do with being AAPI? What does it have to do with this month? Because all this is, it's crazy. Let's historicize a little bit here. Anybody know Vincent Chin? He was killed in 1982. If you're in ethnic studies classes, you might have read about Vincent Chin, who was killed by 2 white men with a baseball bat. Here's what I want to draw attention to: not just the killing itself, but the way that NBC News had described what had happened. On June 19, 1982, Vincent Chin, a Chinese-American man, was beaten to death in Detroit, Michigan by 2 men frustrated with the U.S. auto industry's troubles. Here, we see a soft language like frustrated. When they're frustrated, you're frustrated that you're going to beat somebody to a pulp with a baseball bat. Chin was Chinese. From the rest of the article and the way the history books have portrayed this, the men were frustrated about the ways in which Japan had been starting to surpass the United States in auto sales. And so these men have thought that people like Vincent Chin were taking jobs away from them. But the news portrays it very differently. It allows us to empathize with these two men, doesn't even say white, for the auto industry's troubles. We can fast forward to 1989, also in California, Stockton massacre. This cat, 24-year-old white man, Patrick Purdy, he murdered 5 Asian kids. He shot up a school. He wounded 29 others. And so what happened at that time is the response was focusing on gun control and not anti-Asian violence. Even though the Attorney General found a festering hatred against Southeast Asian immigrants, and specifically the ways in which Patrick Purdy was talking about the damn Hindus and the boat people. There's a pattern. And it's absolutely racially motivated. It's not random that they're Asian. Let's rewind a little bit. 1930 in Watsonville. Similar to what happened in Detroit, local white labor leaders called for the deportation of the Filipino farm workers. They said that they were menaces. They mixed with young white girls, so get rid of all of them or I'll burn this town down. They rampaged the community for 5 days. 5 days this happened. Furman Tabera was murdered. And you know what happened? Nothing. Nothing happened to the men who killed him. We can keep going. We can look, if we historicize the ways in which there's a pattern of anti-Asian hate in the United States, we can see that it's been systemic. It's been part of a political agenda to leverage some type of disaster, such as a disease or a war or jobs, to be able to mobilize some type of policy. It's a pattern in history. Not too long ago, the Stop AAPI Hate organization created a reporting center. And by February 2021, there are 3,800 incidents of reported AAPI hate. By the end of the year, it went up to 10,000, almost 11,000 incidents. 11,000 incidents. This is the same year. How this breaks down is mostly harassment, physical assaults. And you could access this report yourself to see how things are broken down. But out of that, those 11,000 folks reports, people are getting messed with. And you can see here that the majority of individuals reporting these incidents are Chinese, Korean, then Filipinx, then Japanese, Vietnamese, and so on. It doesn't necessarily mean that these are the people who are experiencing the hate, but definitely these are the ones who are reporting it. But as we look, we see like, oh, AAPI is quite vast. And then here in the bottom is the Pacific Islander. We don't even know who those folks are. This 0.3% and what Pacific Islander countries are they from? I don't know. Just lost. But I will say this, out of the top 20 states with the largest number of reported incidents, California is number 1. This so-called blue state is number 1. This is where we are. Well, also in California, recently transitioned ancestor Nipsey Hussle. He reminds us that we're not the cause, we are the effect. We are the effect of a situation that we didn't start in the first place. So for us how do we figure out how things started in the first place? Well, that's work. And if I'm talking to you with love, I'm also inviting your spirit of love to use that love to drive the ways in which you try to learn and historicize, well, what started these things in the first place. Well, let me go to one of the OGs here from the Philippines. Renato Constantino, he wrote Miseducation the Filipino. It's a spinoff from Miseducation the Negro. Speaking of which, Carter G. Woodson, who wrote Miseducation the Negro, has a direct connection to the Philippines and the ways in which the Philippines, through U.S. imperialism, was trying to do similar things to subordinate those who are Black here in the United States. So Renato Constantino saw the patterns from Miseducation of the Negro, and he articulated it in Miseducation of the Filipino. And he says in this text, unless we prepare the minds of the young to correct the distortion that lifted up foreign masters and shamed our own selves, we'll have no assurance of preservation. In other words, unless we fix the ways in which we see these people who try to subordinate us so that we could try to be them and be ashamed of ourselves, we're not going to self-preserve. Simple. We will be annihilated. And I got to ask, like this idea of distortion. What's that distortion? What do you notice here? Put it into the chat. What do you see? What does this mean? What you see? Throw it in the chat. There you go. Crabs in a bucket, right? We know this. When we see crabs in the bucket, what do we think about? Like, one crab is one is trying to get out, another one is trying to pull them down. And this is a metaphor that we use in many Black, Indigenous, people of color communities. It's not just Filipinos. We know this. But what's around the bucket? They don't start fighting until someone pokes them with a stick. That's right, Rachel. And those people who putting them in the who poked them with a stick, put them in the bucket. Right. So when we think about this idea of crab mentality tends to make us think that we are just doing it to ourselves. This is just what Filipinos do, or if you fill in the ethnic group. This is what we do. It's our fault. But how much do we look to see who put the crabs in the bucket in the first place? It's not just a metaphor. You come with me in I think 2004, I went to the Philippines and I visited my cousin out there, and I traveled the land and so forth. But for a while I was in the city of Manila, and then there's a part of Manila called Intramuros. It's this fort right here, a Spanish fort. So I'm over here in Fort Santiago, and I start going in, and you see these bars here. I'm on the outside, I'm starting to enter what I understood to be more of like a cell, holding cell for Filipino prisoners. And then I came across this. When you look down, you see these grates right there. So it's like the bars, instead of in front of you, it's like on top. And I'm like, cuz, why are these bars on the ground? He's like, well, we're right by the Pasig River, and so when it's high tide, the water comes in right here every night. And so if you're in here, in order to survive the night, you gotta be at the top. You gotta hold on. And if you're not at the top, what are you doing? It's more than just a metaphor. And it's more than just our mentality. We were taught this. Who put the crabs in the bucket in the first place is what the big homie Patrick Camañan always asks. And so let's talk a little bit about why. Let's make sense of this. Here you see my kids when they're a little younger. My eldest child, Mayedi Kalaya, named after the Filipina moon goddess, protector of women. My youngest, Davao Paulo, named after the Filipino warriors of the South who fought the longest and the hardest against the Spanish and the Americans. we were at this conference. I tend to bring stuff. My son is actually right here with me right now at the center. We're at this conference in Watakanienka Haka land, Mohawk territory, which is northern Ontario. And so we took a break from the conference. It was on the land. So we, you go up like these hills and everything like that. There's no like concrete paveways. It's not like hotels and everything. Yeah, you're right there. And so we took a break. We walked around what's called Gullwing Lake, which is what you see behind you over there. And so we were going around Gullwing Lake and get really hot because it's a summer day. And Mighty is like, I'm tired. You know how they weren't a tween yet, but they were getting close. I'm so tired. I need some water. So all right, cool. Let's go back down to the lake and figure out how to get there, and then we'll refresh. So we start going down. And then when we're there, Mighty sees these fish, and she goes, "Hey, fish!" The fish looks up and says, "What's up, kid?" Mighty says, "Hey, how's the water?" And the fish says, "What's water? What's water?" The fish is so used to their surroundings and doesn't even know what they're in. Whether the water is healthy or toxic, it's pervasive, it's saturating, it's invisible, it's normal, it's natural to them. What is our water? Particularly, what is the toxic water that we're in that we don't even recognize because it's normal, natural, invisible? And let's just say we go back to this idea of distortion and we throw pebbles into this water. What do we see? We see these ripples, right? We start to see the water. Oh, there is water there. Yeah, I got you. But what happens when we continue to look through the rippled water? Well, one way to understand it is thinking about this idea of keeping it 100. And we all know this. We've heard this. I don't even know if folks really say it. They say a variation these days. When we think about keeping it 100, it's like keeping it real. But what if your conception of reality is distorted? Can you ever really keep it 100? Because see, the nature of oppression is that it distorts the way you see reality. If we're constantly saturated and immersed in those conditions, we think of those conditions as normal. It is what it is. It's whatever. And then we're like, AAPI month. Yeah. Dope. And that is important. Well, look, check it out, y'all. If we just go back, AAPI comprises about 48 different ethnicities and 300 languages. Like, we are clumped together in a huge group. And specifically, it's all these folks here. But when we see data or talk about AAPI or Asians are taking the jobs, we're all clumped into one. There's a lot. But see, look, the thing is even though there's this idea of this model minority myth, and then we try to fight against that, right? Try to challenge that. Thing is with that is that a model minority needs to happen in order to have non-model minorities. And when you have non-model minorities and minorities, guess who gets to fight? It's designed. And we think about this design, and when we try to assert our humanity, when we try to say we matter, we belong here, we're proud, let's defend ourselves, we try to build solidarity, this morphs and gets transformed because it gets seen as a threat. Because how dare we try to assert our humanity? We have to fit in. You're not supposed to be who you are. You have to fit into this. And that means you have to lose stuff. Your sense of self, your tradition, your heritage, your language, your ways of being, your values, your ancestral knowledge. And we do this naturally and normally. And then we have all these programs like diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI. We got our DEI initiatives. Whoa, whoa. Why we just need to include more folks? We just need to diversify. But it's really hard to diversify and include more folks into a system that is fundamentally oppressive. It is important to have diversity, equity, and inclusion. But we also, we also have to dismantle what seeks to homogenize, what's inequitable, and what excludes in the first place. It has to happen together. You can't do one without the other. You can't just have, let's get more folks of color into the university or more students into these classes. If those classes are hostile, are toxic in the first place, what good does it have to have more folks of color in there? Change the classroom. When you change the classroom, you look at the department. When you look at the department, you look at the college, you look at the university. You have to look at it all. I know that sounds overwhelming, but DEI itself is not enough. And then when you try to assert things, when you try to assert your humanity, when you try to build with folks, you get seen as the threat. So this is last summer. I was working with faculty to create a first ever anti-racist liberatory pedagogy academy, where faculty work with faculty towards these anti-racist and liberatory aims. And I got this letter because in recruiting faculty to be a part of this cohort, and faculty would get stipended for this, so we were also offering some compensation for their labor and work in this, because we know it's hard. We know it's not easy. So when they apply to be part of this program that I'm a part of leading, my name is on this call for applicants, and it somehow leaks to the mainstream public, and conservative news channels got a hold of it. One email that I got in particular, I find it has quite a number of formulaic things in here that we've seen nationally, and that can be theorized. But it could affect me personally. So let me read a little bit about what it says. The subject line is, "You are a racist." And it says, "Hey, you with the clown makeup on, you are a racist bastard. Let me tell you what whiteness is. Civil War, 620,000 whites died fighting to end slavery. World War I, 116,000 whites died fighting for American freedom. World War II, Vietnam War, Korean War, Iraq, Afghanistan, the war on terror. Over 7,000 died, including whites defending freedom and fighting for people of color." That's what whiteness is. Liberal Marxist idiot with mashed potatoes for brains. CRT is Marxism and communism on full display, and its aim is to divide and destroy American institutions. It is reminiscent of the Nazi persecution of the Jewish people because of their race. Public denunciation of white people is now mainstream and considered justifiable in the name of Marxism. It's a vile and contemptible racist ideology, and you are promoting it. You liberal professors are a conga line of freaks, Marxists, communists, racists, and fascists. You can go F yourself. And I say that with all due respect and the highest of compliments. This is a perfect case study to see behaviors that are rooted in a particular system of oppression. There's a psychological defense that's happening here. There's a resentment. Number one, it rejects the presence and normacy of whiteness, white supremacy, and racism in the United States, while simultaneously enacting it or reifying it. It's putting me in my place. It's upset that I'm trying to do something, and it says, "You know what? Sit down, son." And then it's defensive. So it tries to distort what whiteness and CRT are. No, it's not that. It's this. Look, let me tell you what whiteness is. All these things. Right? It's on its back heels. And then it deflects. It redirects enactments of repression from the United States in particular, and it claims that race conscious frameworks like critical race theory, for example, and like my work, is racist. And it called me a racist. This idea here that repositions whiteness as just another minoritized group, particularly when folks of color are trying to assert their humanity, that's what Zeus Leonardo and Dixon Roman call a post-color blindness society, where whiteness just tries to assert its superiority by saying that it's actually oppressed. And then it says everything else is racist. Post colorblindness, as opposed to colorblindness, which disguises the ways that racism is happening in the United States while still enacting it. Post colorblindness flips that. It evolves. And of course, there's a passive aggression. You see everything here is in caps, all caps. You know what's happening there with the caps. It's like they're shouting at me. And he uses denigrating language. Instead of like a backlash, Embrick and some of the other homies call this white lashing. Right, so this is all under the umbrella of what's called white emotionality. If you're really interested in it, you can hit me up, or you can look at some of the references below. But there's a way to make sense of this and not just say like, oh, you know what? Like maybe I shouldn't have started that academy, you know, with faculty. Maybe I should have made the call for applicants, for participants to be you know, like more softer. But there, I'm not defending anything. If anything, there's everything to affirm. I'm not defending the work. I'm affirming the ways in which we need to assert our humanity. And by doing so, that means we're going to call things out. We're going to interrogate the way things are and have always been. You know, it's nothing new though. You know, Miss Lauren, she says, look, my emancipation don't fit your equation. Right? She already says it, like when we're trying to be free, I mean, this is basically what post-color blindness is. When we try to emancipate, it doesn't fit whiteness's equation. And so it becomes resentment. Whiteness's emotional reaction to uplift historically marginalized people is met with resentment. How dare you? How dare you even bring attention to stuff that we did in the past? Just leave that. Let's move on. Move on. Can't. I mean, not in the ways in which they want us to. Whew. Last year we lost another real one. Recently transitioned ancestor Bill Hooks reminds us. Making sense out of these things is important. And she calls this theory, specifically a critical theory. And she says, they say, I came to theory because I was hurting. The pain within me was so intense that I could not go on living. I came to theory desperate, wanting to comprehend, to grasp what was happening around and within me. Most importantly, I wanted to make the hurt go away. And I saw in theory a location for healing. It helped them make sense out of why things are the way that they are in the first place. And then making sense out of their experiences. So that they're not looking at themselves and saying like, am I crazy? Maybe it's just in my head. But theory in itself isn't inherently healing or liberatory. Bill Hooks continues by saying it fulfills the liberatory function, the revolutionary function, the healing function, only when we ask that it does so, that when we direct it towards that end. So we use theory to make sense out of conditions and then work towards improving the conditions, right? That helps inform our problem solving. If we have a thorough analysis of the problem, the situation in the first place, we could have a more reasonable, sustainable solution. But if we don't have a fundamental analysis, then we're just doing like DEI without trying to dismantle systems that perpetuates inequity. We have to direct our theorizing. It's hard work. We can't do this alone. And so as I think about wrapping things up, I want to invite you to figure out what it means to crew up. And what I mean by crewing up, I mean catalyzing resistance and emancipation with united power. And so what that means is like understand who are the homies, and not just like homies on the block. Of course, they have wisdoms, but generally speaking, it might be the homies that you read who written something that just spoke to you. Right? It might be this idea, right? People on the soundtracks, people on the screen, whatever it might be. Who are those folks that help us make sense of ourselves and our conditions, our realities, and help us navigate that? Those are the homies. Those are the ones to crew up with. And how do we put these multiple voices into conversation? Y'all are in college right now, and right now they prioritize and they privilege certain forms of knowledge. How do we push back against that? Put multiple voices in the conversation and say, like, this is also legitimate knowledge. Like when I put Miss Laura, when I put J. Cole, when I put Kendrick into conversation, it's legitimate knowledge too. And then when we grew up, we also support our own healing process because it's necessary. We need to work towards our healing. And in doing so, we build solidarity with others. We inspire and empower our own work. And we draw upon these critical discourses. We remind ourselves that we're not alone in this struggle for an equitable, a just, a humanizing experience. We're not alone in that. The white supremacist project would make us think that we're alone. The capitalist project would make us think that we're alone. But we're not. That's why we got to crew up. Now, I want to really speak to the white folks in the space too. And you might be considering yourself an ally, white ally. You might consider yourself an accomplice, a white accomplice. You might consider yourself a white co-conspirator. Or none of those. And if you don't consider yourself as any of those, it's part of the ways in which I'm encouraging you to reflect upon, well, where do you really stand? And when you think about that, you ask the question, how is whiteness enacted when it continues to take center stage? When you prioritize values or practices, things that we do, things that students have to read, assignments that they have to do, how they demonstrate their understanding, their learning, whatever it is, when we continue to center whiteness, we think about the readings that they have to have. Isn't that continuing whiteness and white supremacy? So then for you, if you're white presenting in a white body, identify as white, part of the question is how can you uplift the work and perspectives of Black, Indigenous people of color? How do you step back? How do you witness? How do you bear witness? How do you support? How do you ride or die? How do you step in the way? Stand in the way of assaults against Black and Indigenous people of color so that you can act as a shield. This is crewing up. And then we as AAPI, we got a lot of work to do ourselves. Like during this pandemic, some of us had never felt racialized before, right? Because we started to buy into this American dream and the way capitalism is rewarding us with financial resources. And they're like, oh man, AAPI hate, where is this coming from? Well, in Rethinking Schools, there's a brilliant article, look this up. It has a message here for all of us. Some guidance for us. It's a map. What does it mean to fight for Asian America? And fighting for Asian America doesn't mean fight against another racialized minority. That's not what it means. Because we can look at unprovoked incidents of AAPI hate, and we can see on the other end of that is another person of color. And yes, absolutely, it was horrible what had happened. We think about the situation, but we also think about the broader context around the situation. This is what Wayne Allen Mo Yonamine is talking about here. And you have resources too. At Chabot College, you got the movement, learning community. That's for students. You have a Asian Pacific Islander Education Association, the PIA, working hard to affirm you, surround you in a decolonial critical race love, support your journey, your right to affirm your humanity, to assert your humanity. They also act as your shield when assaults are against you. remember, you're not alone. So if it's against you, it's against the person next to you too. You just may not know about it. So why not know about it by being part of these? We can't do this alone. And so I write you this love letter. And I crew up with you. And I want you to continue to crew up as well and figure out what that means. And so when I crew up with you, I don't write just you a love letter. I write us a love letter because I'm part of the crewing up. When we think about bell hooks, theory is more than theory, especially for some of us. It helps us to affirm our humanity, helps us to make sense. It puts into language, it names the thing that we've been feeling. Oh, that's what it's called, and that's how it works. True. It brings us into this collective struggle, this collective hope. And when we crew up, roots are strong. Roots are strong. I don't care about that wind. And so I remember then, how has this country taught me to hate myself? I have to return to love. And when I return to love, I love me. And when I love me, I love you. And me, you, we're worthy of love. We're worthy of love. And so, always remember to love yours. And yours includes all of us. Thank you. There's my contact information right there. Hit me up. Let's continue to build. Thank you.
Yes, we see the applause. Let's give it up for Dr. Reyes.
Thank you, everybody.
And with that, we've got some time here. If folks have questions, thoughts, want to reflect, let's see some expressions of our humanity, and let's start coming together now. Let's use this space, and while we have our guest here, as he's taking us on this journey. It's okay if you need a minute. I was preparing this whole time. I knew I was going to start Q&A. I really wanted to have a question ready, and I'm taking it all in with all of you here. So, but feel free to jump right in. Don't be shy.
Okay, sure. I can get started with the question. Or I guess just kind of like a reflection, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I guess just preface this, I'm half white and I'm half Asian. And I kind of feel like torn in between the two communities sometimes. It's sometimes when I try to talk to my more Asian friends, they tell me, oh, I'm not Asian enough to understand, or I have sometimes these really weird things where it's like, oh, you hold your chopsticks wrong, but it's kind of similar to other people. But at the same time, on the white side, it's like, oh, you're not white enough to understand us, or, oh, well, you're kind of Asian, so you probably wouldn't get it. So it's like, when I come to these kind of like microaggressions against me, because I'm torn between these two things, I guess it's like, how should I react to this? I don't really understand, because I just feel so torn between these two communities sometimes.
Thank you, Justin, for that question. That's an excellent question. When you're mixed race here in the United States, it becomes super complicated, especially when you're mixed with some European ancestry. So I hear you. I can't really tell you how you should react, in the sense that how you react is how you react. So honor the ways in which you're reacting, like follow those things that I mentioned in the first place, like noticing how your body is reacting, notice your breath, notice your feelings, take a moment, maybe not necessarily at that time, to process it. You might have to talk to somebody, you might have to journal, like attend to your emotions first and foremost. Because if you don't do anything, you just internalize it and you collect it, and then it becomes you, and then you can be shameful. You can get shame, you can get anger, you can get resentment, you can get guilt, all sorts of different things. right?
Yeah.
First and foremost, do that. Secondarily, be in communication with others. Like talk to folks about it. Talk to folks who might be able to relate to your experience, who are also of mixed heritage. See how they've come to their own identity. Like what have they read? What have they listened to? What have they watched? What has helped them to make sense out of their mixed heritageness? And then in doing so, you might start to develop the language to be able to figure out how to respond next time it happens, because there will be a next time. I don't want to tell you that the next time is going to happen. You know exactly what you're going to be able to, what you need to do, right? First, attend to your body's needs and how you're responding. Reflect on it. Get yourself in a community of folks who can understand your experience. Start lacing yourself up with the language so that you can respond back. And I know that I make it sound simple. It's not simple, but Justin does. That's my thought. Thanks
Thank
for the
you very
question.
much.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. It's just nice to talk about it sometimes. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. And don't not do that. Always make sure that you allow yourself and like empower yourself to be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you, Justin, for starting that off. And a great question, and something that we see a lot of, and I'm sure that you're not the first student to do that, or the first person here to deal with that or to have those questions. So great way to kick things off. Anyone else want to jump in? We can throw something in the chat if you prefer that way. See a lot of exclamation points and fire in the chat, so we love that too.
Could I jump in for a question? Okay. I actually have two questions. So the first one is like around that email, that kind of hostile email that you got. Like, I'm just wondering, like, how did you respond? Did you respond? And then also like related to that, but like, like we're always on this grind. We're always trying to like work and like trying to like, do this good work, right? And then sometimes it just feels like very hopeless. Like, things don't change and just kind of like, I don't know. So in moments like that, where it's like, you just start to feel like, man, you start to lose hope and stuff like that. Like, like what advice do you have? Like when we have those little moments where we start to lose hope in some of this work.
Oh, I know that so well. Thank you, Michael, for this. Well, let me first address your first question. Like, what do I do? So, unfortunately, I've gotten a lot of experience with microaggressions or macroaggressions. And so I've learned over the years, like how to respond with integrity and with grace, and also with a conviction that's rooted in a really clear analysis. So I've learned a lot about how to do this responding type of thing. And so I was getting requests by Fox News and other places to do this interview. And number one, I think the university came and said, like, we're going to support you, with this Dr. Reyes and everything. We're going to make sure that we monitor your emails. And if anything else happens, find anything suspicious, then, that you let us know. And all sorts of folks came to my support and everything. And for a while, I thought like, okay, like a homie of mine says, like, when you find yourself being challenged and you want to respond with defensiveness, take a pause and think about defining yourself instead of defending yourself. And so I took that to heart, and I said, I'm not going to go on Fox News because that's going to be a hostile environment. If I'm going to control the narrative, then I'm going to control the narrative. It needs to be in my turf. And so I figured out how to transform that kind of pain into joy. And so I talk about that email in the recently published article that Dr. Cooks had mentioned earlier, a love letter to educational leaders of color. And so I bring that in there, and I use that letter, that email, as a teachable moment. And so I use that to be able to say, like, look, this is how things are functioning, and it's a pattern in society. So I've allowed it to be used as a teaching tool. So it's helped me find some agency. It didn't disempower me. And so I've been able to flip it. What does it mean when I feel hopeless? And I've felt that so many times in the past few years, without doubt. But always the times where I felt better well, I would start to remind myself that things aren't hopeless is when I stay in community with others, when I am alongside, when I gather with people specifically, and not to talk about like the business of things, like when we're really truly gathering to hold sacred space. And that might mean you don't have that space right now. And if you don't have that space right now, what does it mean to cultivate those spaces? What does it mean to, and like I know like you're one of the directors for the movement program. So what does it mean to also have sacred space there? Cultivate that kind of community where folks can talk about it and remind themselves that it's not hopeless. Right? We have to do work to make it not hopeless. And when we feel hopeless, it's okay. Let's honor that. Let's listen to that. But let's also be in community so that we can remind ourselves that it's not hopeless. We're not alone, and we could do something. We just got to continue to do things together. And if that's just talking about things right now, then that's what it needs to be. I hope that helps. Thank you.
All right, I don't think this is going to come out in the form of an articulate question, but I'm just thinking of all of us in our different roles, and we've all take on leadership roles here, whatever position or titles we hold. I'm just thinking about the missteps and how hard it is to step out of this mindset, right? This is the water that we're swimming in. And where do you start? Where do you start when you don't see it? Where do you start when you make that misstep? How do we get back on track? How do we get into this position of where we can, allow people to express their humanity and step away from what these norms that have been kind of pushed upon us that we didn't realize, that maybe we still don't realize are where they're coming from, and these oppressive structures that the things that were always here, that we are so attached to, and that in some ways, right, we see it work just enough to where we hang on to it.
Yeah, it's a really important question that you're asking there, Arnold. I mean, part of the thing about being in the same community for multiple decades, like myself, and working alongside folks, that I'm gonna make a lot of missteps. What I've learned over the years is how to own those, how to be accountable for those, how to be able to recognize how other people were harmed by those, naming it, giving them space to be able to talk through that, really allowing myself to be radically vulnerable to hear that and to own up to it and make reparations. That's something I've had to learn and learn the hard way. So there's that, because in a lot of different ways we follow a system. And so, for example, when I was a high school principal, I absolutely created harm. Like, I had this vision with other folks to make this liberatory school, and I think we were onto something for sure. We looked at structure, and we said, if structure is the problem, then let's change the structure. So we thought about, like, how do we redesign schooling to mirror more our values and so forth. But we kept butting up against the system. So when you keep butting up the system, you're going to do oppressive things for sure. And so I absolutely did some things that I would hope that I would never do again, in terms of being like a supervisor of sorts. So there's that, and also some things with some young people that I still carry to this day in terms of like regrets. But I let the regret go so that I can learn from it and make the reparations when I can. And I try to figure out like how to not do that again and affect the structure and the cultural conditions that I'm in to help like make that more realistically possible, right? Because it's hard when you're swimming against the grain. So that said, part of the work means that you have to look at the structure, the way things are, and you said, does it really have to be that way? Like, why does it have to be that way? Why is it that way in the first place? Like, why is the essay the dominant form of demonstrating like thought? Like, why does it have to be the 5-paragraph essay, for example? Why do all these forms need to be completed? Like, what is the way to be able to talk to people as humans? And I think we forget about the humanity of others when we think we're just going down this checklist and attending to them as objects. And so, like, how do we shift the gaze and remember that everyone's a human with a human story and experience? And how do we continue to ask why? Like they didn't turn in 10 assignments. Well, why? That's the place to start. Why are things the way they are? I hope that helps.
It is. I love that. I love how you address the individuals, the self, and the harm on the other person or peoples or that you're doing, and still looking at the structural and how all of these things are really important. I think that's really the first thing that I took away from that. So thank you.
No doubt.
All right, I could talk to him all day. Anybody else want to jump in here?
So Arnold, I just want to thank GT, as always, my brother. I wanted to ask a question because often we experience discrimination in a very subtle way, right? So, for example, at one point when I first arrived at the Chabot Los Positas Community College District in 2008, and subsequently hired an African American chancellor from Peralta, we hired a Latino from Peralta, and I was accused through an email of, ever since we've had Wyman Fong, we've brought a lot of people from Peralta, which was really code for bringing in people of color. And even though I know some people felt it, very few people wanted to speak up, right? And that's, I think, the challenge is, strength comes from those difficult moments where you have to kind of take the lead and say, I stand for something. You know, can you share with me some of your experience in that in terms of what advice you would give people that feel like, it's just not right how they're treating certain people, especially on the basis of race? But at the same time, they're scared that they're going to take a hit, right? Whether from the system, from the management team, and often I've heard, I'm classified, I'm manager. I do it for you if I was a tenured faculty member. But I see that very, very prevalent in our system. And any advice in terms of building the courage to do what's right?
Yeah, thank you, Wyman. Wyman is a big homie. I appreciate you being here. You should answer that question because you've been doing this longer than me and you've been making it happen. I'll offer some humble thoughts, but but if the real answer to that question, ask Wyman. My thought is that crew up. I think make sure like you continue to develop and build the crew around you so that when you need to step up in these ways, you're not isolated and alone. Sometimes that means that you will physically be alone and you got to say something. Otherwise, you're contributing to a hostile environment. If you're in a meeting space or a classroom space where some out of pocket is being said and you're worried about it, if you feel like your physical safety isn't in danger, definitely try to say something in those spaces if no one else will. And I know that's hard, but that might mean that if you don't be ashamed of that. Don't regret it. You could replay. I absolutely did this so many times. I've replayed like what I should have said, and what I learned was that eventually became seeds for me. And instead of what I should have said, I eventually started to build the capacity to say it. And so it's not going to be like a switch, like all of a sudden now you're like able to respond to all these things. It's kind of like a dimmer in some way. Sometimes it's going to come up gradually, and sometimes it'll come up fast because you're part of this crew that's going to ride or die. And that mean like the tenured professors here or the more senior folks will step in, to be able to support you and give you some shielding and blocks and all that kind of stuff. Another professor might help a student with, like a class that is, fundamentally problematic in oppressive ways, and they might advocate for you. So get the advocates, get the supports, but don't keep it in. Don't internalize that because you develop a shame for what you didn't do. Remember, you're not alone. You got to do the work to be in community with folks, and then seek the elders, right? Like, how did you do this for so many years? Like, what did you do? Right, let's figure out how to continue to map this process out. Like, you can't just try to recreate the wheel. You got to learn from others too. But you already know that.
Thank you. I got my matrix on for you.
Hey, I see that. There you go. There you go. And congratulations on your new role.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's huge.
Okay, I think we are coming up on our time, so thank you very much. This is just the beginning of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month here at Chabot. I'm going to try to drop a flyer in here as quickly as I can. So today we are kicking it off with the President's Office and for inviting our speakers. So thank you to the President's Office for sponsoring this event and providing the space and the opportunity to bring Dr. G here with us. Tomorrow evening on campus is our first ever, we're gonna do a night market. So very, the hot thing in Asian culture right now is to come out and to be there and build community and express ourselves and start to come together. Saturday, LPC is hosting a virtual event with some really amazing Asian American authors. It's all in there. Our Asian American Pacific Islander graduation coming up. So if you know students who are wrapping up, make sure that we take that they're a part of that so that we can take the time to celebrate them. And then last but not least, I know I'm running out of time here, trying to kick off our Asian American mentoring program. So if you would be interested in that, that's information on how to get involved with that is also in there in that little packet of flyers there. So also everything on the Appeal website, so you can find it. You all know how to find us. Thank you so much for coming. And one more hand for Dr. G.
Thank you, everybody. Reach out to Arnold, or if you got my email already, hit me up if you want to continue to build. A couple of folks here have it. I appreciate all the organizers to put this together, all the folks who were able to hold space here today, all the folks who are going to continue to work with young folks and colleagues to process all of this. I know I said a lot and did a lot. It takes time. Don't let it sit on the shelf. Continue to explore it. Thanks, everybody. Be well.